Good morning. I'm back in the wood shop today, and power was out for a while this morning, and the wind is just really nasty here today. But it's another day to look at God's Word, and we look today at Exodus 27 and 28 as we continue our reading. And in this part of the book of Exodus, yesterday it talked about the laying out of the temple, the tabernacle. And, I tried to show you a picture of it. Well, I've got a different Bible here today, but I thought I should have lifted the Bible up and held it so you could have seen the drawing there. But, God was very specific in how he wanted the tabernacle made that way, and so that it was portable, but yet so that it would be the same each and every time they set it up when they were, because they would be, they didn't move every day. They were, they would be here and they would be there, and to start with they were moving a lot, but then they got to be kind of, here and there for a little bit longer time in their 40-year wandering in the wilderness. Chapter 27 starts with instructions of making the altar for the burnt offerings. And it says, you shall make the altar of acacia wood, 5 cubits long, 5 cubits wide, and it'll be square, and it'll be 3 cubits high. So it'll be about 4.5 feet high and roughly 7 feet square is this, the altar for the burnt offerings. So it's, large enough, because they would, the burnt offerings would be a lamb, or, they needed to have, a fairly large surface for this. And it was made of wood, and it said you make horns on each corner, and then you shall overlay it with bronze. And so this wood is overlaid with bronze so that the wood will be protected and the wood won't burn that way. And it was, bronze is a very durable metal in so many ways. And it says you shall make a pot for it to receive its ashes, and shovels and basins and forks and fire pans. And it was specific in how this should all be done, and so that there would be, the ash would be able to fall down through and be caught in these pans, and through this grating, a network of bronze. And it's very, very specific. You should put this net, this grating, halfway down in the altar, and everything was just very specific. And it says you shall make it hollow with boards, and they shall be made just as you were shown on the mountain. So God had shown Moses how to do it, and again he's telling them again now. And so very specific about how the size of this altar that would be. And the altar was made so that with the hooks and with everything, it was portable. They could pick it up and carry it as they moved from one place to another. And then verse 9 starts out, you shall make the court of the tabernacle. And it's, on the south side, you shall have hangings 100 cubits long for that side. So if you think of, 5 cubits being 7.5 feet, 100 cubits is 20 times that, so roughly 150 feet. And then on the sides, and then the ends end up roughly 50 feet. So the tabernacle is roughly 50 feet by 150 feet, if I remember what I was reading in here earlier. And it's just the width of the court shall be 50 cubits, and 15 cubits of hanging on the one side, and all of these different instructions as to exactly how God wanted them to make it, and of all of the utensils, the pans, the grates, the fire pokers, everything that was needed. God was very specific in all of those things. And then verse 20 starts out, because they had a lamp in there, and he says, you shall further command them to bring pure oil of beaten olive. So it was olive oil that was used to fire the lamps. And, a lot of vegetable oils and those things will burn and will, keep for the light that way. And they didn't have propane and natural gas and access to those kinds of things. And and you couldn't just have a stick burning, but they had oil, and this was olive oil that they used in their lamps. And in one of Jesus' parables about the 10 brides waiting, there were 5 of them were prepared with extra oil for their lamps, and so it was a whole lot different for them. I mean, I think about the pioneers here in the United States, and in earlier years, I shouldn't say maybe the pioneers didn't have kerosene, but they got to have kerosene lamps, so they weren't, and they had wax candles, and that a lot of things had changed by the time people were settling here in North Dakota, and all over the United States in many ways. But they would use olive oil, for the lamps in the courtyard of the temple. And then he talks about, says, Aaron and his sons will tend it from evening to morning before the Lord. It will be a perpetual ordinance. It will be ongoing. It isn't just a one-time deal, but it's a perpetual. Every year you will do this, and the candle or the oil, basically they would burn that, from nightfall till morning, in the temple later on. And then chapter 28 talks about Aaron and his sons who become the priests. And Aaron and Aaron's sons, and they name 4 of them in here, and I'm not going to try to read those names, but it says, you shall make sacred vestments for these priests. And so the vestments are, it's a breastplate, an ephod, a robe, a checkered tunic, a turban, and a sash, and I think about when we get to the whole armor of God, in Paul's writings, that every part of the body was consecrated, decorated for the Lord, the ephod, the different pieces of this would, the ephod would be of gold, of blue, purple, and crimson yarns, of fine twisted linen. It wasn't to be made out of gunny sacks. Use some of your nicest stuff here. And I think about, as I look at, a lot of pastors and priests, and as a pastor, I have an alb, I have different vestments, I have, green and, for the different colors for the different church year that you would wear, and they are all, they're nice. They're not made out of just the flour sack dish towels. I mean, nothing wrong with a flour sack dish towel, but that's not what God said to make the priestly garments out of. Make them out of the finest material. And granted, some of the white albs and the vestments, I mean, they're not the fanciest material today, but yet they symbolize the purity. The white alb that a lot of people wear, most pastors wear a white alb, would signify the purity that comes in and through Jesus Christ. If they may wear a black undergarment, or sometimes they'll have the white alb under a black garment, which the black one would signify then sin, and just different ways that we still today somewhat honor these traditions of the priests being clothed for God. And it's in verse 9 it says, you shall take 2 onyx stones and engrave on them the name of the sons of Israel, 6 on each side, and that Aaron the high priest would wear these upon his collar, so that every time Aaron went in to do his priestly duties, the 12 tribes of Israel were represented in the names that were upon these stones that were on his garment that way. And it says, as a gem cutter engraves signets, you shall engrave on the 2 stones the names of the sons of Israel. And so it's a reminder that God was faithful to his people. He called Israel, Jacob, to be his, and he had the 12 sons and the 12 tribes, and all of these come into play. And God is reminding the Israelites and us of his leadership, of his choosing them, and of his guiding them in so many ways all of the time. And then, it goes on through the rest of chapter 28 with describing the other priestly garments and how they should be made. And, it says, 3 or 4 different times, that Aaron shall bear the names of the sons of Israel upon his heart when he goes into the holy place. It's one of those things that was important to God and then important for the Israelites to remember, that God led them out of captivity, that God was faithful in all of that, in all of his promises to them. And it's just, kind of interesting the instructions that God gives in the way that the priests should be dressed as they come to do the priestly duties. And it is, again, to set the priests apart from the others so that they could be identified that way by the people. Maybe they didn't all know Aaron. I mean, there were 600,000 men besides women and children. They may not have known Aaron and his 4 sons. They all knew who Moses was, and his countenance, his face, and everything was so changed by his encounters with God. But maybe they wouldn't know who that was. And today, in today's world, a lot of clergy. I've got clergy shirts with a collar, and you go out to the grocery store shopping, you go here or there with that on, it shows who you are. And so it's a priestly garment. And I remember the first time I wore my alb, at worship, before I could have the stole and everything on it, but you could wear the alb, showing your, identifying yourself as a servant of Christ that way. And the first time I wore a clergy shirt, it was just kind of uncomfortable and felt very conspicuous about it. But yet, it identifies you for who you are, and it gives the people an invitation to come and to visit with you. And I've had that happen. When you're dressed as a pastor, you go out with just your clergy shirt on with your collar, and people will come and visit with you. And so the idea of the priestly garments was that they would be identifiable for all of the people as God's servants, as the ones that were an intermediary for the people to God. May you be richly blessed today.